it's an honor for me to be able to share this good news with you because I believe that God's hand is all over what's happening in the world. Whether we understand it or not is a different question, but um, you know, truth is truth, and trust is kind of relying on third parties. It's relying on intermediaries. It's got a lot of hope in it. There's a lot of, you know, reliance on outside sources to get trusted news or a trusted service or a trusted custodian of our cash or a trusted babysitter, right? Trust involves a human element, and truth just is. So what we're all doing is acting like Indiana Jones. There's a hidden diamond, there's a hidden treasure somewhere, and the truth is there, and God put it there, and it's up to us to go and find it and discover it and discern it and find the true knowledge and then process that knowledge through understanding. And as my spiritual mentor tells me that, my a guy that's just so brilliant, if we don't understand something, we don't own it. If we can't understand the principle of love or forgiveness or reciprocity or algebra, whatever the situation is, if we don't understand something, it's impossible for us to own it. And so the bridge token between knowledge and wisdom is understanding. So how do we figure out what's going on in our world, the chaos, what's the driving forces, who's in charge, where are we headed, what's this all about, why is nothing seem to make any sense, and what could possibly be the narrative or the driving force, and how does scripture play into this, and how does money play into this, and how does just human nature. So anyway, as Larry mentioned, I'm a former Air Force pilot, flew in Desert Storm. I have a management information systems, kind of a computer science undergrad degree. I flew for Delta Airlines for a couple of years until I got furloughed after 2 years because the airline industry had a little bit of a recession. I decided to go to Merrill Lynch, became an investment banker, did all of that good old training, Series 7 and 65 and 63 and life and health and annuity. So I got to do all of that fun stuff, if you will. And I use fun with air quotes. That's where I really found a passion for the mortgage industry. And that's how I met my beautiful bride, Casey. And that's how I met Larry through our company. So fast forward, pandemic hits, everything, the plandemic hits, everything shuts down, nothing smells right. It's just a perfect, for me, narrative to take out a force on this earth that the people, the powerful, the elite on this earth did not like. And it happened to be Trump and the people that supported the idea of Trump. To the elites, from my worldview, MAGA is a disease, and it's a disease that needs to be dealt with. I think you may well know that Trump used to say something along the lines of, it's not me that they're after, it's you. I'm just standing in the way. And so kind of with that sort of operating mentality, being a, Georgia boy, a Air Force veteran, a, Georgia Bulldog fan, just a very curious individual that likes to be very analytical and philosophical. Cryptocurrency and the idea of following the money just took hold of me in early 2020. And I've been like a dog on a bone ever since. I haven't stopped with my voracious curiosity to learn, to ask questions, to invest, to travel the world over, to blog, to meet people. And I'm on this constant quest of, sharpening my mind to the best of my ability. It's it's kind of scriptural. We're supposed to know, and we're supposed to study, and we're supposed to engage in the renewing of our mind on a continuous, ongoing basis, and seek truth. We have to do the work to find it. So, knowing that there's a law at play in the universe, I wanted to find out what that law was. So, I titled this presentation "The Level Playing Field" because I think if you've ever listened to Trump, you've heard him talk about it. You've heard him talk about how unlevel and unfair the playing field is the world over, how certain nations get most favored nation statuses, and the rules just seem to come out of thin air based on whoever decides they're in charge to make the rules about the global financial system. Who's in, who's out, who's cool, no suit for you, do what we say or we cut you off. There's a weaponization of power that allows the powers that be to determine who gets to participate and at what scale and what level and of opportunity on the world stage. Kind of goes back to William Shakespeare's good old saying, all the world's a stage. So I'll just pose the question rhetorically. If all the world's the stage, who owns the stage? Who hires the actors? Who writes the script? Who does the editing? Who does the production? Who censors people that they don't want to hear on the world stage? Philosophical questions, deep questions. Some would say, oh, that's too political. Well, I'd say, well, they're biblical questions. Who's running this world? Who's making the decisions? What did Jesus come to teach us about on earth as it is in heaven? So what are the laws that drive men that don't have a compass and don't have a relationship and don't have a faith? What are the spirits that drive them? What's the truth? And maybe we can just start asking a bunch of crazy questions and see if we can figure out how we unwind this ball of yarn. So what I'd like to talk about, Larry, and please jump in if this isn't on point or on target or you want me to change or add. But tonight, real quick, I want to talk about the concept of decentralization. What is money? Let's just define it so we can baseline the discussion. What is crypto? Where are we today? Kind of what's going on in the world. And then most importantly, I want to get through this as quickly as I can so I can entertain questions, because the questions you have for me are a lot more important than, me sitting here and droning and just dumping a bunch of information on you. So I do have a website if you're interested in following some of my brain droppings or some of my writing. You can go to cool.show. The KUWL stands for knowledge, understanding, wisdom, and life. Those are the things that I'm passionate about. So you can go up and see my episodes, which are some videos, what's going on with the Fed. If I find smart, brilliant people, I want to highlight them. I want to bring their truth to you. A lot of times I'll bring a video and then I'll put an editorial or I'll put context around the clip of the video that I want to highlight. Sometimes it'll be a video that I put together. Sometimes it'll just be an article. But all the information, how to contact me, and all my social media properties are located at cool.show, including a link tree is at the bottom of the footer of each page. So on that link tree, you can find me on Truth Social and on Twitter and on my Substack and on my Rumble and YouTube, and anywhere I have a property, that'll be found on my link tree. Okay, leveling the playing field. Why in the world would we want to move on Earth from a centralized to decentralized system of trade where it's inclusive to everyone in the world? Everyone has access to capital, and the centralization of power and control and sovereignty and autonomy is pushed down to the lowest level where the rights ought to be inherently located. It's a very, very, very founding fathers, Constitution of the United States concept. We want maximum liberty, maximum freedom, maximum sovereignty at the lowest level possible in this nation. Our founding fathers fought over the concept of federalism. They didn't want a king. They didn't want a central church. They didn't want a central bank. They didn't want central overlords telling us what to do in our lives. We wanted it small. We wanted state sovereignty. We almost didn't sign the Constitution over the fact that there was going to be a federal government. Finally, they said, okay, here's a few things you can do, nothing more. And if it's not specifically delineated in the Constitution, It lies with the states and the people. You can't do it. Look at where we are today. $34 trillion in debt. Clandestine, weaponized organizations like the CIA and the FBI and the NSA and DARPA, Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of Health. I mean, our founding fathers' minds would explode. The concept here is power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We are living and feeling and experiencing absolute corruption in a centralized location. So we have to level the playing field. We have to decentralize the power structures and put the power back in the hands of we the people. Trump has been about this his entire life. You can go back and look at him 30 and 35 years ago talking about this very topic. Sound versus unsound money. Our Constitution mandates that we have the Department of Treasury issues and manages currency that is linked and backed by gold and silver. Period, full stop. There's nothing in the Constitution about the Federal Reserve that is not federal, that has no reserves, that's privately owned by a foreign corporation in the city of London, that's not backed by anything but hot air, that has an infinite ability to print whatever the hell it wants to print. No accountability, no transparency, never been audited, never will be audited, because they are the law. They have untethered themselves from the Constitution, our constitutional principles, who we are. The philosophies of our nation were hijacked the moment several things took place. The first of them being a corporate separation. The Banking Act of 1871, real briefly, turned our country into a corporation and not a constitutional republic. 1913, the monetary system got handed over from the U.S. Treasury to the Federal Reserve, the central bank. And to put this in context, I want you to think about the magnitude of that decision in 1913. In essence, you've got these bankers from Europe, 7 bankers that went down to Jekyll Island that represented 25% of all the world's wealth. In total secrecy, they spent 9 days coming up with a plan for a brand new global monetary system. Then they went back home. They spent 2 years not telling anybody about it. Denied that the meeting ever took place. Finally, they get good old President Woodrow Wilson to sign it on New Year's Eve, 1913. And in essence, here was the deal. The Fed comes to America and goes, hey, you guys are making your own money and, you're doing a great job. You're printing your currency and your dollars. How about you let us do that for you? We'll print the money and then we'll loan it to you so y'all can use it. And America goes, cool, great idea. We'll do that. That's basically where we are right now. When you have a Federal Reserve, they create the money and it gets put into circulation in the form of debt. So every time money is put into the country, whether it's at the government level, the corporate level, through a bond, through buying a car, getting a mortgage, you're putting debt into the system. That's how money is birthed or activated into our country. It's not money. They call it money, but it's debt. Our money is a debt instrument. It's an IOU to the issuer, and the issuer is a foreign corporation known as the Federal Reserve. The last point I want to talk about is exploitable versus mathematical. Exploitable is something that is subjective, that's not transparent, that's subject to thin air rules and laws. Whoever's in charge gets to make the rules, and whoever owns the gold. Exploitable is subjective, it's political, it's whoever's making the rules gets to decide what the rules are going to be. Mathematical is absolute precision. There is no wiggle room. It's a law. It's the purest of all sciences. Every mathematical equation either works or it doesn't work. Math is the basis for computer code, the logic on a computer code. Math, the problem is either right or wrong, full stop. Why is that important? Because crypto is nothing but math. Crypto is software. Cryptocurrency just means cryptographically encoded and or protected mathematical formula in software code. That's all it is. Crypto is software. Nothing spooky, shouldn't be scared about it. Can it be used incorrectly? Of course it can. No different than a gun can be used for hunting, to feed your family, or to murder someone. A tool is a tool is a tool. But crypto is software. That's all it is. What we should be concerned about is in whose hand is the software, in whose hand is programming things, and how much transparency and accountability is built into the equation, the mathematical equation, so everyone can see everything that's going on. Sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. If everyone can see the math and everyone can see the software code, there's nowhere for anyone to hide. So those are some concepts I want to just kind of set as a baseline. Let's see if I can get this to change for me. Look at where we've gone. The internet came on board. Everybody didn't know what emails was. Everybody probably remembers little funny video clips of Bill Gates being on the David Letterman show and David Letterman looking over and in the way that he can do it and say, what's this thing called email? And nobody knew what the heck it was. It was brand new. But what email did, or I'm sorry, what the invention or the introduction of the internet brought the ability for data and communications to move from the monopolistic hands of government and the church, and it was decentralized to the world. The ability for people to communicate, broadcast, make videos, connect, send emails, shop, look at databases, compare notes, compare narratives. Well, I was told this, and then I was told that, and I heard this is why so-and-so happened, and this is, wait a minute, A and B can't be true. Next thing you know, 7 billion people the world over have access to data and communications in a decentralized world, and the folks at the top who deem themselves the top of the pyramid have lost control of information and communications, and it began, it's weird to call it the old world, but from 1990 to today, it's created a world of openness like we've never seen before in our life. So what is the wow of decentralized ledger technology, cryptocurrency, blockchain technologies? What's the difference between where we were and why is this fundamentally shaping everything that's happening in our world? Well, very quickly, we went from a data and communications world that was not really built to transmit value from a monetary standpoint, from a property standpoint, from the title of a car to the title of a house, to a representation of gold or a share of stock or a bond or anything like that. If I wanted to sell, 100 shares in a $10,000 piece of artwork and everybody could spend $100 and buy a piece of it, I could tokenize ownership, put it on the blockchain, and if people have it on their wallet, they have it on their wallet. They have a fractional ownership. So now we have data and communications, but we have the ability to move value from point to point the world over. And we can do it with absolute mathematical certainty that we know the identity of both parties on both ends. Trust is not necessary from a third party anymore. We don't have to pick up the phone. We don't have to worry about banker's hours. We don't have to worry about if they recorded the entry right. We don't have to hope that our money is in the trust company's account and they didn't spend it. We have sovereign control. We have identity on the block ledger, on the blockchain ledger, and we know what we own. We have transparency, and it's recorded on 150 servers in 60 countries around the world on the blockchain. It's undeniable who has title ownership to every piece of tokenized property on Earth. That is massive. No more trusting the institution, no more hoping that if 2008 happens and we have a stock market crash and the assets start falling apart, that Citibank and Wells and JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs will be honest and tell me, that I can have my money back. We don't have to trust a third party when we have sovereign control and we have the value in our own possession. Soundness. How do we introduce gold and silver and collateral to currencies issued from every country in the world and validate that they haven't put too much currency or they have too little gold or silver or platinum or diamonds or oil or whatever acceptable collateral there is in that country that backs their currency? Everyone in the world wants to know, look, if I'm going to pay you 20 and you're going to give me 20, what we're exchanging back and forth has an equal value. It's a level playing field. 20 ought to equal 20 ought to equal 20. And how do we do that in some mathematical formula where there's collateral and there's currency and there's revenue to the government and they're not just hitting a button and adding $8 trillion in new currency into the system and telling everybody in the world, oh, we're good for it. You know, just trust us. We're gonna pay it off. Accountability means, let me back up to soundness a little bit. It is impossible in this world to have sound government or sound politics and unsound money. When you can print an infinite amount of money and you're the world's reserve currency and you can just hit enter on the enter key on your keyboard, you can fund any absurd stupidity, anything that is outrageously nonsensical, from CRT to DEI to mandatory shots to studying the mating habits of turtles to anything in the world that you want, because there's an infinite supply of money and you don't have to be accountable to anyone because no one's ever going to be able to go and audit the moneymaker's books. And you cannot run a government or a business or a family where anyone can just create money at will. So what blockchain is doing and what distributed ledger technology and tokenization and sound money is doing is it's bringing order and discipline and honesty and transparency and security into a world that has been corrupted by people long ago that invented the monetary system for their benefit and not ours. In essence, to be able to extract wealth, productivity, labor, property, assets, patents, our life savings are exchanged for basically a casino token issued by a casino. And whenever they want to call their casino chips back in, they can. Whenever they want to change the value or the price of the casino chips, they can. We can't look at the books. We have no rights. By accepting their casino chips, we accept all the terms and the conditions of usage of their casino chips. And it's just a system we were all born into. We were born into a system of trust and tradition. That's just the way it is. That's how money works. Well, the monetary system is a fraud. And it's a fraud that was introduced into our country in 1913. It's gone through several reiterations. It went through the Bretton Woods Accord after World War II, where it was supposed to be linked to gold again after World War II. Once foreigners began to see that we were spending money like drunken sailors, they wanted their gold back, and we didn't have it. And so Nixon takes us off the gold standard. And then in 1974, we create the petrodollar. We do a secret deal with OPEC and Saudi Arabia that says, make everybody in the world that buy oil, buy it in US dollars, and we'll provide you military protection the rest of your life. No matter what happens, we'll protect the kingdom, but you have to mandate all oil sales in the US dollar. So that secret, off balance, unvoted for situation took place. There wasn't a public vote. There was no consent. They just did it. So in essence, what's important to know is that in contract law, and Larry's an attorney, I'm not, but there's a principle that says fraud vitiates everything. So anything that happens after a fraudulent or illegal transaction that takes place, any profit, any laws, any appointments, any elections, anything that takes place after a fraud has been proven to have occurred is null and void. So if you really want to blow your mind on a thought exercise, think about what could that possibly mean for America if the Federal Reserve was a fraud, if it should have never been enacted. From 1776 all the way to 1913, there was no income tax. There was no IRS. The country ran just fine. We issued money that was real sound money backed by gold and silver. And now all of a sudden, we've got paper money backed by nothing, issued by a foreign corporation in a very deceptive piece of legislation that was nowhere close to constitutional. So a little bit of history, a little bit of philosophy, but in essence, the Federal Reserve was born on a fraud. The lie has been going on for a long time. I'm going to show you why I think it's unraveling now in the here and the, what's going on. But let me cover this one last thing, and then we'll get to the good, really good part. In the old world, the math of 1 + 1, I wanted to put this out, equals 1.75. Well, what happened to the 25 basis points, Rob? What happened to that quarter point? That quarter point, if you will, just as a theoretical construct, that quarter point went to the house. That 25 basis points, or 12.5% of all the wealth in the world, is just entitled to the owners, the non-governmental organizations, the Rothschilds, the Bank for International Settlements, the World Economic Forum, the governments, the military-industrial complex, the United Nations, the CDC. Whoever the cool kids wanted got that 25 basis points because they built the system. They built the monetary rails. They built the way in which money was defined, interest rates, economic rules. They got to invent everything about the system because it was a privately owned, for-profit system of which none of us were taught in school. But long and short of it is, the world's monetary systems have been foreign-owned, closely held, for-profit corporations owned by a very few elite that own the central banking franchise all over the world. And taxation, interest, debt, profit, control, and power comes from those who invented the monetary system. That's unfortunately who's been kind of running our world for a very long time. The new world, distributed ledger technology, getting rid of all the fat, getting rid of the intermediaries, taking back sovereign control of my assets, not having to worship at the temple of Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase or Wells Fargo, or mother, may I please send my grandmother some money in Vietnam or Mexico. And no more permission, no more third-party intermediary. I get to hold on to my assets on my wallet, do with it as I please, spend it when I want, send it to anybody I want without a permission slip, without 12% or 9%, without it shrinking in value. If I want to put $1,000 in my wallet and spend it in 9 years from now, that $1,000 ought to be worth $1,000. Kind of like gold has retained its value. Unfortunately, in their system, they regulate the inflation to the target. We're just going to have you lose 2% of your wealth every year. It's going to shrink in value 2%, but don't worry, we've got this all taken under control. We're only going to steal 2% of the world's wealth every year. At least that's our target. That's our plan. Of course, it never goes to plan. And who the hell would set up a monetary system where the creator of the system gets that 2% does not go away. It doesn't. It evaporates from us, but it goes to the house. So the powers that be want to maintain the monopoly in the system that they have in place. They do not want transparency. They do not want to shrink their monopoly. They do not want to lose the revenue that they think they're entitled to. They don't want the accountability. They don't want the tokenization of assets that can move around the world and that will make them irrelevant. That's the last thing on earth, the powers that be, that own the stage, that hire the actors, that write the scripts, that produce the production, that edit the production. They want to maintain their position of power and control. This new monetary system infrastructure threatens the whole ball of wax, the politics, the media, the 7 mountains that we hear about in the Bible. Who's on the top of those mountains? Education, business, government, media and entertainment, culture. All of the world empires are at risk of being lost if their people that they fund and blackmail and bribe and pay or have the same ideological worldview lose their power at the top of those mountains, because the wealth comes back to the folks where it should belong. That threatens the monopoly of those in charge. So you can kind of see maybe what's driving some of the panic in the world, some of the pandemics, some of the mandates, some of the tyranny that's taking place. Think about this for one moment. Distributed ledger technology frees the world from the tyranny of one world reserve currency, where one country, one group of cool kids gets to set the monetary policy for every nation on the world. I put BRICS plus 10. If you know what BRICS stands for, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It's probably BRICS plus 15 countries that represent more than 80% of the world's population and 65% of the world's GDP are leaving the US dollar ecosystem. They're de-dollarizing. They're giving the middle finger to the Federal Reserve, who operates primarily out of Washington, D.C., because the dollar is the king dollar. It's the petrodollar. It's the world reserve currency. It's the most powerful economy in the world. So these countries are saying, you know what? I don't think I'm really going to take a knee any longer to Klaus Schwab and Euro Nerari, and I'm not going to let these twerps and the World Economic Forum put their boot on my throat and tell us how to run our country. I tell you what, we're going to take back our methodology for how we're going to buy oil, who we're going to trade with. We're not going to take sanctions from Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anybody else. We're going to run things our way. We're going to pay and buy and trade with anybody that we want on a level playing field that's fair and open and transparent, that has open books and transparent accounting and sound money, that's interoperable, that's permissionless, that's trustless, open 24/7, 365, and there's no intermediary, middleman, monetary fund, IMF, BIS, World Bank, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, Chairman Powell. There's nobody in between point A and point B. If we the collective want to move money or value or stocks or cars or titles from point to point, person to person, entity to entity, anytime we want to, it ought to be a principle that we have the ability to do trade, as long as it's legal, with anybody in the world at any time for any reason, without a permission slip from mommy and daddy in Washington, D.C., or the city of London, or the Rothschild banking empire. We ought to be free to barter, store gold, sell silver, trade back and forth with anybody, whether they're one state over or one continent over. We ought to be able to interoperate with one another. That is the promise of distributed ledger technology. Forget about, if you could just in your mind for a moment, just don't even think about crypto or token A or token B or what Jamie Dimon said or what you heard on CNBC, or, is Dogecoin a good coin, or why is Elon? Forget all of the noise. Let's just focus on the principle of wealth creation, inheritance. The Bible tells us that we're supposed to be thinking not only about ourselves, but our kids' when it comes to being able to pass them down a legacy, pass them down a heritage, pass them down some wealth. So the system is not designed to allow that to take place. The system is designed from a standpoint of, it's all ours, we built it, we own it, we'll let you use it, but if we need it, we'll do a bail-in tomorrow. We'll do a bailout next week. We'll tell you can't go shopping unless you get a shot. We'll take your money out of your banking account if you eat too much red. All of this crap is only enabled through centralization and through private ownership of what we call money. Distributed ledger technology disrupts that monopoly in a way that has the deep state, the worldwide deep state, powers that be, losing their minds. They do not want there to be a restoration of sovereignty back in the hands of the individual. So that's kind of the I don't know if this video will play or not.
Here's the way that you can blow everyone up in this country.
Let's see, can you hear this, Larry? This is going to be about a 2.5 minute video, but I want everyone to please, if you can, turn your volume up. And I want you to hear one of the smartest men in this space. He's going to give you 2.5 minutes of wisdom, and hopefully it'll put a fine point on some of the concepts that I was just sharing with you.
Here's the way that you can blow everyone up in this country. You'd raise interest rates to a level that blows up all of the assets, because everyone who's wealthy in this country is wealthy in one of three ways. 4, dollars in their bank account. If it's dumped, those collapse. Stocks, bonds, and real estate. Interest rates spike in a hyperinflationary environment to compensate for the massive loss of purchasing power, and everything disintegrates like that at once. You now bring everyone down to a common denominator, and a little bit of incentive and help from the government with the new CBDC, maybe just what the doctor ordered. Now, again, this is all opinion and hypothesis, but you know, Occam's razor says something's going on and the rest of the world is coalescing against us. How does it all play out? What does it mean? How does it end? Don't know, but I do believe that if you are not a contrarian, you're going to be a victim. And you can see the biggest money in the world. Like if you look at this right here, when Roosevelt confiscated gold in 1933, the majority of the wealthy people in this country didn't lose any gold because they were clued into what was coming. All of the big, the politicians and all his buddies sent their gold by steamship to the safe deposit boxes of places like Switzerland. And to this day, I'm very good friends with the largest importer of $20 gold pieces in the world. And most of them come from the Swiss banks and the banks in Europe where they were held. And they were all sent out prior to gold being confiscated. Why is it right now that the biggest money in the world is accumulating gold at the biggest pace since 1967? If you go back to 2019 when the BIS reclassified gold, go back 2 years. 2017, the Bundesbank, out of nowhere, tells the world, we want all our gold back from the Fed. Now, they started a process a few years earlier, but got loud about it in 2017. And within a few weeks of that happening, the Dutch National Bank, the Bank of Austria, Turkey, Hungary, Poland, the Czech National Bank, they all said, give us our gold back. And to the Bank of England. The next year, 2018, they bought more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined. 2019, those numbers are up almost 100%. And then the BIS makes the announcement. Do you think that's a coincidence? Or did the BIS say to all these banks, start buying gold, bring your gold back, because we're going to reclassify it and make it an important part of the next system? So the big money is always 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. Do you think there's any coincidence that you see the largest accumulation of gold since 1967 right now, as gold is muted in dollar terms? No, I don't. Price is the tool of misdirection.
Price is a tool of misdirection. Follow the money. It's biblical. It's human-based. If we want to find the answer to a problem, we want to solve a crime, we want to find a motivation for human behavior, the number one topic in the Bible, that 40% of the Bible or more, a little over 40%, talks about man's vulnerability to worshiping something other than God. And Jesus and God understood that. The teachings and the principles were, we took the 10 Commandments down to 2. Rule number 1, worship the God with all your heart, mind, and soul. The temptation would be that you'll worship girls or gold or glory and title or fame. You'll think 4 Lambos in your car and a big house and a house on the boat and a private jet. And the number one topic in the Bible is not love. It's not forgiveness. It's not about marriage. It's not about family. It's about avoiding the temptation to worship false gods or things that will make you happy. Avoiding the truths of where we should put our focus. And so understanding that the money system was designed to be the cheese in the mousetrap. And the folks that designed it understood human nature, and they put cheese on the mousetrap, and we chase it. And we run like crazy and we work like crazy. And then the inflation goes up and we work even harder. And then they need more money. So now they tell the women, burn your bras and I can do what you can do. And women's lib. And so now they double their income tax base because now the men and women can go to work. And then they introduce credit cards. And then you got to keep up with the Joneses. And so both people are working, and then you're in debt, and then you're turning your kids over to the government so they can train them. And then one thing leads to another, and the disunification of the individual family unit takes place because we're all out running faster and faster and faster on the hamster wheel, going after the cheese. That kind of explains in a nutshell the evil genius of those who created the monetary system and entrapped us, or better term, enslaved us all with the deception that we're really free. We're the greatest country in the world. We can do anything that we want. Are we free or are we in debt? Are we debt slaves? We go out and buy a house and have to spend 30 years to pay it off with usury interest rates? I mean, the monetary system was designed to give us the deception that we were free while enslaving us under their rules and regulations and power and control. So that's all I got. I hope I didn't go too long, Larry, but I wanted to give you a background as to I just wanted to level set so that everybody kind of understands the disruptive nature of what's taking place in the world and what might be putting the fear of God in the people that have long run this world and mocked God. All of a sudden, it looks like they've held on too tightly. They're losing control. The world's in chaos. And what can possibly be the explanation for the powerful acting the way that they're acting? I think
right,
if
so
we really go ahead.
No, this is great. I think it's fantastic. And you and I have spent a PhD, or you give me a PhD on this during the time that I've spent with you down there. And you and I, quite frankly, have had a myriad of conversations. And as far as I think for me, just the learning over the last year has been incredible in the different ways that we can go ahead and respond to this. What would you tell people here now how to respond? In other words, I think of specific things that you and I have spoken about, and I know that there's nervousness to many because of you're talking about. Now they're talking about chicken prices going up. All these chickens now infertile. The egg factories are so. What are you doing to build your buffer around the Cunningham household?
Good. Well, um, first principle is try to have as much margin as you possibly can. And that usually entails getting rid of as much debt as possible. Don't go out and make any major purchases. Don't be out over your skis. Don't be paycheck to paycheck. Do the very best that you can to live below your means as they exist today. Secondly, have assets as close to you as possible. So what that means is smaller banks, regional banks, credit unions, mid to low tier banks. Stay away from the big, massive money center, Chase Manhattan's, Wells Fargo's, Bank of America's, those institutions. Try to keep things close. Have some actual spendable valuables close by in the event, not panic, not talking about being fear-based, just talking about being prudent, be a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, have some cash, maybe some silver rounds for spending things in case, we go a couple weeks, have some food, have some water, uh, locally have some ability to transact in the event the credit card machines go down and you can only get gas from your neighbor or groceries or chicken or eggs from the local farmer. Know a local farmer. Make friends with somebody that makes food. Learn how to make it or can it, at your house a little bit. Have some, black beans and rice in ample quantity for 30 days somewhere in the roof, in your attic. Store it somewhere. Diversification.
So, Rob,
Yeah.
this is great. When you and I talk, one of the things I do, I bought a lot of those ready kits that store stuff for 25 years. I think I got probably about 1 or 2 months supply for our family. I think those are really good because those are things that are perishable or non-perishable meals that can hang for a long time. We talked about, I do think as far as obviously having some of that stuff as reserves, whether it be just the food, whether it be cash. Michelle and I have been very, very diligent making sure that we have cash. Um, we'll get to that in a second. As far as we have cash so that should those systems go down, we want that ability. I do think it's important to take a little piece of each paycheck and put it in some place that's safe. I wouldn't even put it in a safety deposit box. I don't believe, because if there's ever a run on the banks, you're not going to be even allowed in the bank, especially if you saw that stuff with B of A just a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, where they could even, fund people locally. You and I have talked about gold and silver. I personally am a major fan. And if you want to talk about it, I would love for you to talk about maybe glint and the really awesomeness about why glint's good. You mind doing that?
No, absolutely. I do believe that the basis of the world currency, the money that has lasted the test of time, God's money, biblical money, is gold and silver. From a standpoint of leveling the playing field, if we want to have a level, interoperable playing field where we can do world kind of global trade the world over, the money's got to be backed by something. Trying to count heads of cows or sheep or corn or wheat, barrels of oil gets a little bit difficult. It's very, very rapid. It's moving all the time. Whereas quantities of gold and silver can easily be tracked and monitored and verified in a lot of different ways. But I believe the price has been absolutely artificially suppressed, because if you think about it, let's go back to, there's a monopoly monetary system. Those that own a monopoly don't take kindly to competition. They don't want alternative forms of payment. They don't want people to like gold because it holds its value better than the junk paper that they produce. So they make gold look unattractive. They oversell the market and the gold price, and they manipulate it in the derivatives market or in the commodities market. They use the exchanges to kind of weaponize their power and artificially suppress the price of gold and silver, because they don't want it to appear as an attractive alternative to the debt instruments that these people want us to own. They don't control us when we own gold and silver, but they do when we have credit card debt and mortgages and cash in the bank and fractional reserve lending. We go in and put $1,000 in the bank, and they can lend $10,000 out. They pay us a 0.5% interest and they loan it out for 4%. It's a hell of a gig if you can get it, but that's the way they set the system up. So glint pay is a way to own gold and then have it stored physically in your name in a safe mountain vault secured location. There's actual physical inventory that is set aside for the individual owner, and then they issue basically a debit card, and you need to fill up your tank of gas, swipe your glint pay card. If it takes 1/8 of an ounce of gold or 1/22 of an ounce to pay for a refrigerator, you can swipe your card and pay with gold. But the beauty of it is,
if you're buying if you're buying gold at $2,000 an ounce, hypothetically, and something readjusts and it's at $10,000 an ounce, all of a sudden that appreciation has adjusted into your account, which is really cool about it.
It's marked to market at gold price on an ongoing basis. So instead of keeping your money in a bank of account at $10,000 at Bank of America, you could have $10,000 in a glint pay account. If you don't need to spend it, don't spend it. And if over time the value goes from $2,000 to $2,500 to $3,000, your account goes up, but it hopefully doesn't shrink, and it's not subjected to hyperinflation like the Weimar Republic that looks like is happening all around us. I mean, eggs are $11. Eggs are $11. They hit $11 a dozen in California.
That's great. That's because it's California, but it's coming. All right, a couple questions are coming across the screen here. First, J.A. says, why do you bring up food shortages? I got 3 questions here. What is your opinion on why you bring up food shortages?
Well, the bottom line is the number one currency of tyrants is fear. They have to scare us into a big bad virus, take a shot, not enough, too many people on the planet, global warming, not enough land, got to have tiny houses, stop eating cows because the methane gas that cows emit are going to make us all burn to death in the climate. You name it. The concept of scarcity, whether it's food, housing, medical services, whatever the case may be, fear is the currency that basically people that run banks and governments and institutions use to keep
So,
us in a.
I'm gonna
Go ahead.
I'm gonna interrupt and just say, because we know that the way that they operate, I want to get some of these other questions, but because we know the way that they operate, they've always been on the offensive. We have never been red pilled until recently. We went along with the system the entire time. And so now that we're red pilled, what you're saying is there isn't reason to be fear, but we have the knowledge that we didn't have back then to know what their game is. And their game is to go ahead and create a situation where people who aren't like us are going to be very fearful. So what you're saying.
Look, I don't want to violate the concept of fear not. That's not what this is about. What this is realization. Let me do a thought exercise real quick. Everybody on the call, answer this one question. I know my government would never blank. Is there anything that we can put in that equation? If they'll traffic humans, if they'll mandate shots, if they'll shoot the president of the United States, President Kennedy, in the head, if they'll take us off the gold standard, if they'll make secret deals with foreign governments, if all wars are bankers' wars, and bankers are willing to make profit by going to war and funding both sides of the war for 20 years and sell drugs around the world, is there anything that our government is not? Is there a red line where they will morally go, oh, well, I would never do that? We already know there's nothing that you can put in that blank. So we just need to be prudent and be prepared for whatever they might throw our way. If they want to cut down
Next question.
Right?
Yeah, I think you're right, and we need to be prepared. And I think that's one of the purposes of this phone call, just to make us prepared. Right. So Kenny says, what time frame are you looking at for a market implosion, and what time frame for a rebound? I'm not sure you can answer that.
Yeah,
just be prepared.
Guys, if we think about this in battlefield conditions, one of the axioms we had in the military was hurry up and wait. You can have the best plan in the world. Sometimes, though, there's a move and a counter move. There's a strategy, and you think you're going to do something, and you're going to attack tomorrow at 3:00, and they do something, and you call off the dogs. You don't attack till 3 months. So there's a move and a counter move in this battlefield of, if you will, it's mathematically and statistically impossible that things are rolling out the ways in which they're rolling out, that countries are leaving the dollar system. They're creating a new monetary system. Hunter Biden's laptop is now being able to be spoken about on the media. We're finding documents. Jeffrey Epstein's back in the news. The Clintons are back in the news. The Ukraine situation is all about money laundering, trafficking, bioweapon labs. It is the worldwide headquarters for the deep state. And yet the narrative makers are telling us big bad Russia is over there starting a war. And we've got to send all of our money to Ukraine because Ukraine's such a morally virtuous country full of Nazis.
All right, next question.
It's insane. But so to answer your point, Larry, we've got to basically understand that when could the market implode? We don't know. But the point of the matter is there's a nominal value, a price, which is the number one tool of misdirection, and then there's value. So I want to encourage people to go to my website and go to my Substack. It's robcunningham.substack.com. We need to understand this one thing. This is my opinion and my speculation. This United States of America corporation and the fraudulent monetary system is being intentionally collapsed. It's being brought down on purpose by the good guys, because it can't exist anymore. It's so far beyond the ability to get a hair and a cut and a dry and a color and a manicure and a pedicure. We cannot domesticate this wild animal anymore. It's dead. And we have to encourage the facilitation of it to die. So then the phoenix that rises from the ashes is a more constitutional republic with sound money, a smaller government, greater purchasing power, gold-backed currency, and back to what our kind of founding fathers, what the God principles in our Constitution were all about. Unfortunately, the righteous and the unrighteous are going to experience some of this collapse. But let me leave you at this, Larry, and everyone listening. No one is out there helping to engineer the collapse. Okay, we have to understand, in March of 2020, Donald Trump brought the Federal Reserve up under the command of the executive branch and the U.S. Treasury Department. The U.S. Treasury Department reports to the executive branch of the government. If anybody thinks Joe Biden, who can't eat an ice cream cone or speak a sentence, is running the country and running his own facilities, I got an igloo in South Georgia to sell you. Okay? Joe Biden ain't in charge. So the things that are happening around the world are happening by design because the powers that be want them to.
All right, Rob.
The other side of that coin is we're going to all see the markets collapse. There's going to be a scare event, but we're going to be anticipatory. We're going to be prepared for it, and we're not going to freak out and lose our minds when a big scare event or catalyst event takes place.
All right, quick question here.
Sure.
This is a quick answer question, okay? What about the premiums on the purchases and selling of coins or the value of gold?
I can't speak specifically because every market in every city and every state and every country can be different. I would just say do your own homework, find a trusted source. In the big scheme of things, I'd rather have some precious metals than not. I'd rather have precious metals over fiat currency if I can find it. Be reasonable, find a trusted advisor that knows something about metals, and do your homework.
Okay. I have one in a bit, but Michelle is asking a very easy and difficult question. Does Glint also have silver? And because fraud vitiates everything, do you think all the debt will be erased? Tell me the truth.
Yes, the debt will be erased. It's mathematical. I want everyone to understand and hear me clearly. $34 trillion is mathematically impossible for 20 lifetimes to pay off. We will never pay out 34. We're at a terminal point where only three things can happen. The corporation goes bankrupt, which creates a market correction. We could pay off the debt. Never, ever going to happen. Or we just keep going, and that can't happen either. So we're at a dead end. We're at a T intersection. We either reorganize, pay off the debt, or default. Those are the only three options. We cannot pay it off. We're not going to reorganize corruption. So it's going to be a restructuring. And in the restructuring, I do believe we're going to go back to a no income tax, no IRS, maybe a 15, 17% sales tax on new items, gold-backed currencies. Debt's going to be forgiven, because think about this, Larry. If fraud vitiates everything and all of our contracts were written in Federal Reserve notes, and we have to pay back Federal Reserve notes for Federal Reserve notes, and the Federal Reserve is dissolved and goes away and there's no more Federal Reserve, who do we pay our debt back to?
So Donna asked a question.
Federal Reserve notes don't exist anymore, so there's no valid contract that we can fulfill to pay off our debt to an institution that's no longer in existence.
So Donna's comment, she said, we're aware that our country has trillions of dollars in debt. So where does all the interest to this debt go? In other words, who gets all this interest?
The central bankers.
Yep.
The owners that issued the debt.
Have the White House mirrored our assets on the QFS? I don't know what the QFS is.
Well, yeah, the quantum financial system is what QSF stands for. And I would say that, look, in a nutshell, yes. If we're not traffickers, if we're not drug dealers, if we've earned our money correctly, and you got $6,500 in your checking account or $6 million in your 401k account, again, I don't know that they're going to necessarily guarantee all of your stock value in Tesla, but if you have your money that you've earned and it's in your hand and there needs to be a swap out or one for one. I mean, Larry, think about this for just a moment. The Iraqi dinar is worth about 0.00006 cents, because before we went into Iraq and took over it started a war over there. What the central banks do, or the powers that be, is they collapse the economy, they devalue the currency, they make their ability to buy things almost mute, and then they go in and they take out the communications and the power systems and the food systems and blow up their airports, and they just blitzkrieg these nations. So they destroyed the currency of countries that don't obey and take a knee to the powers that be in Washington, D.C. and the central bankers. Just as a side note, about I think 90% of all wars in the last 60 years have taken place in geographic footprints where there's no central bank. The reason the wars have taken place there is not the cover story we're sold, it's because the central bank wants to operate in Libya or in Afghanistan or in Iraq or wherever the war happens to be. The central bank comes up with a story and we go there. So we're going to have to move the Iraqi dinar up to par. A dollar is going to have to equal a dollar again instead of 0.0006 cents. So
Rob,
what I'm saying is currencies the world over are going to have to be revalued. And I believe that whether we have a US dollar or an Iraqi dollar, they're going to be close to a level playing field or close to being on par. And so I'm not going to worry about things I can't control, but I do believe we're not going to be left homeless and penniless when there's a switchover and a transition.
one thing that I will be forever grateful for you with is the PhD that you've given me on crypto. And you started talking about the beginning of this here. The thing that I like about it that you didn't say it the way I say it when I explain to people is that it's ledger to ledger, me, and everything gets recorded. I could pay you and you could pay me. And what I like about it, my words are there's no skimming from a middleman. Everything has a middleman with a skimming off the top. Our banks, our SWIFT system, our Fed, whatever it might be, there's a middleman. The great thing about crypto and the bad thing about crypto, I think there's over like 1 million cryptos out there. And a lot of them are scams. We talk about FTX, which is really more than anything else. It was a Ponzi scheme that had really nothing to do with crypto, although it was billed as a crypto. So people are afraid of that. But the beauty, it goes back to what you said. There's good people and there's bad people, and you want to be with the good players. But I'm thinking to myself, after the PhD you've given me almost a year ago and my shift in me, do you have an affordable crypto? You're not giving it financial advice, but is there one that you enjoy and that you see hope for the common person to put maybe some of their assets? What I tell people is they're not buying, it's not buying a widget. You know, let's make it up. I buy something for $1 and it drops down to 50 cents. Okay, I lost some of the value. I can convert it back to those worthless dollars anyways. But I'm not buying a widget hoping it's going to be the next Tesla. I'm actually buying a form of currency. So is there something that you might say, hey, do your own homework, explore, these are some of the things that you like?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, there's probably maybe 20,000 tokens and projects. My focus and philosophy is on utility. I want to know why does the crypto project exist? What problem is it attempting to solve? That's question number one. There's got to be a real world use case. Secondly, is there a real world leadership team? Are adults in charge? Do they have high quality NFL-like first round draft pick quality employees involved in the project? Secondly, do they have real world marquee customers and clients? Do they have revenue? Let's don't go down the pets.com hype of the internet days and buy anything that's got a .com on the back end of it. We've got to find the time when people made the most wealth ever was when people were selling their tech stocks, didn't want to look at their statements in the early 2000s. Interest rates had to get dropped. The tech bubble burst. And in that era, Amazon was being built and Google was being built and Netflix was being built and the infrastructure of the technology was being built at the point in time when people's fear and emotions clouded their ability to think rationally. So there's a set of coins, Larry, that meet a global standard called ISO 20022. Okay, there's about 7 coins or 8 coins that meet that very, very rigid underwriting compliance standard for interoperability. They're crypto projects that are backed by organizations like Accenture and huge banks and huge financial institutions. They are adopted, they're being integrated. I think, for instance, Bank of America, I believe, has about 85 patents on the Ripple XRP technology interwoven into their financial infrastructure. I think 1 out of 6 pennies, 1 out of 6 cents in America resides in a Bank of America account. So you got one of the largest financial institutions in the world that owns 85 Ripple patents or patents on processes inside their financial institutions because they know what's coming. As that gentleman in the video said, the elite, the powerful are always 4, 5, 6 steps ahead of us. We're the last ones to know. So use case, great leadership, great customers, great revenue, compliance standards. That's where I would start. And Larry, I just ask people, I know we don't have that much time tonight, but please dig around on my website, look on my Substack, find the title of an article that makes sense. Most of them can be consumed in 5 minutes or less. Some of them are longer videos, but there's a lot of information.
Tell me again. I'm going to put in the chat because we're going to record this and send this, and I want them to have it again. It's Rob.Cunningham.
It's robcunningham.substack.com. But again, the link to that is on my link tree and it's on cool.show. So I would go to cool.show, but also realize it links you to my Substack where I do my writing and I share my research. So, and you'll find a lot of other smart people out there as well that I focus and I highlight and I bring them to the front stage for people to learn from because they're trusted people that I learn from. So that being said, there's a lot of information there. We can't be fearful. We have to be diversified. But if we understand the concept of follow the money and the world is losing its mind because the bankers are losing control and we're watching a movie, we're watching the old, we're going out with the old and in with the new. It's a huge transition and very few people, I believe, know how to sort of see how this game, this 5-dimensional chess match is taking place. If anybody's ever looked at the cue boards, now's a good time to go look at it and read it with objective eyes and see if it makes any sense and see if the predictions that were put out there 5 years ago that are coming true today, like how in the hell is that even possible? How could they have known that? How could they have published that 3.5 years ago? And here we are. Who could have known unless they're the ones sort of engineering this with a little help from quantum computing, military intelligence, artificial intelligence, white hat operations. We're either all dead or there's a plan in place. one of the two. I think God wins. I think God wins and there's a plan in place. Okay.
So I'm going to just ask one last thing because I know a lot of them. Janine Amir said, "Hey, can you name some of the cryptos besides Ripple?" I know Ripple's not a crypto, but
let me give you my top 5. Let me give you my top 5. Okay.
Here's the top 5. I'm going to say this on a caveat for Rob. He's going to say, do your own research.
This is my top 5 tokens you should go and research. Okay. Number 1 is XRP. Number 2 is XLM. Number 3 is XDC. Number 4 is HBAR, HBAR. And number 5 is Algo, ALGO. That's enough homework to say grace over. You can go to their websites. You can look them up with just a hashtag in front of those 5 symbols on Twitter. You have to be careful who you follow. Be discerning in the value of the messenger or the teacher. Don't just click on any random YouTube video and start listening to some knucklehead influencer. You've got to try to find people that you have a sense through discernment are credible, wise, knowledgeable, and aren't just selling you stuff. So
all right,
those are the 5 I'd start researching.
Let me just tell you guys, for what it's worth, he was very, very adamant that I do my own research. He pointed me in the direction. I can go ahead, Jim. I will talk to you on, I'll put this here. I'll talk to you further on it. And when I send this out, I will tell you places you can go ahead and buy this. It's important beyond that you actually get a wallet at some point so that you can never have it being hacked and lost. Rob Cunningham, I want to say thank you. I hope everybody found this to be valuable. I think that for me, the biggest takeaway is how we got to where we got to. This was really a red pill as far as opening the eyes for a lot of people. I love your message of hope. I love your message of getting ahead of it and taking action ahead of time to protect you and your family. I'm going to have a recording of this for everybody. I probably won't send it out tonight because I got so much work to do. It's going to take a while for it to reduce down into a compressed file, but I'll get it out. And if you guys all like it, let me know. And I know that Rob would be thrilled to come back at some other point.
Thank you, Larry, for having me, and thank everyone for spending some of your night with me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, buddy. We're grateful.
All right, take care.